Hello and welcome to the UK Shit Show election special. This is an Emancipation collaboration from all three corners of the globe. We have, well, all two, but three podcasts from the plane of podcasts. We all three corners. Why do we only be three corners? The world of podcasts, the plane of podcasts is a triangle. That's what I'm saying. Who do we have? Let's welcome and first time person on the show. We got Shane all the way from General Intellect Unit. Shane, how's it going?
Going pretty good considering, you know.
Were you out canvassing for the Scottish Nationalist Party? Go National Hood. Go.
No, I'm far too busy and lazy to canvass for anything. But yeah, huge SNP turnout. It seems they absolutely fucking swept the boards.
Yeah, they sure did. Now, let's bring in the other man from General Intellect Unit. We've got Kyle all the way from somewhere off west. Kyle, where's it going? How's it going? Where's it going? We know where it's going.
Yeah, it's, I went through a crushing left-wing defeat earlier this year here in Alberta. But I think that I was less invested in the party here, so I can only imagine how rough it is over there. Yeah, so my condolences to all the comrades out there.
Yeah. Okay, and finally we have all the way from somewhere in America the ex-Siamese twin post-op Lexi. How's it going?
Post-op, huh? I don't know about that op. Anyway,
the wrong
special ops. How am I doing? You know what? I'm doing great. I'm untouched by tragedy today. And I'm just sipping my coffee. The tides roll in and the tides roll out, pretty much as the theory commands. And I'm sitting atop of platonic heaven, looking down at all the empiricists. And
yeah, we're all into essence, not form. That's what we are.
Yeah.
Since yeah. Right, where do we want to start with this? I'd just like to say I'm not going to be one of those people who's like saying I told you so, because I actually thought there was a good chance Corbyn could pull it off. But I mean, in the more general, broad, long-term discussion we've been having on the podcast, particularly the Mike Macnair series, we're talking about why this style of politics, it can win. I think it can win for a short period of time. You can do your Chavez or you can do your Morales, but you can't do your Marxist type of communist, uniting the individual and the collective forever in a perfect harmony. That stuff is like, that's totally different ball game. But like, I'm very disappointed, I must say. Just it's another 5 years of Tories and a resurgent Tories. So one thing I wanted to, Shane, how are you feeling about it? Like, did you get swept up in the Green New Deal element or any of that stuff? Because I did. I wanted Tories out. You know what I mean? I wanted to be able to throw eggs and cabbages at Boris Johnson's cavalcade and smash the window and burn his house down.
Yeah, I tried not to. But, for a brief moment there, for like a week or 2 weeks, it kind of did seem like we could, at the very least, push it into a hung parliament sort of situation. Maybe even, just at the very minimum, disrupt the fucking Tory hegemony. And then that tiny glimmer of hope that there would be something that would take the pressure off for even a fucking moment, So I did, yeah. I kind of got like, I started to think, because being on Twitter, right, like, and seeing all this kind of stuff and seeing the activists do their thing, seeing the polls narrow, seeing all this kind of stuff really did seem like there was going to be something. And maybe if it was even just a hung parliament. And I was frankly stunned to see the exit poll. Just like, how the fuck? Like, Because I mean, I guess I had my head in Twitter, basically, right? Like fucking
Right.
Brit left Twitter, and it was just like, how could this be so different from the impression, you know? However, you know, like at the kind of intellectual level or whatever, it's like, I don't know, maybe this is the sort of the best thing, right? Because I mean, a Corbyn government would have been a minuscule majority if there was a majority. Otherwise, it would have been
Right.
a kind of rainbow coalition with the SNP and the Greens, or probably even the Lib Dems. Either of those would probably have been very ineffective. I mean, they would have still had to do Brexit. There's a recession coming, all this kind of stuff. They would have it would just turn out to be a mid-round kind of situation. But still, even still, it would be really fucking nice to have that boost, just like put on a little bit less pressure for even a moment, you know? But no, Tory fucking hell world. That's what we get forever, you know?
There's a comment in the chat here. Let me put it up on the screen for people here. It's from Will-Eyed Woney, and he says they should never have gone back on support for Brexit. Like, I think this is totally indicative. Yeah, this is talk. Yeah, that the Labour Party shouldn't have done the second referendum. I think this line of discussion is completely missing the problem, to be honest. Like, if they had gone back on, if they had stayed with a Brexit, they would have probably ended up losing loads of Remainers and you know, Labour Party people that would have gone to Lib Dems or the Tories down south, or not the Tories, but Lib Dems or the Greens, you know, and it just would have been, it's either 40 seats in the north or it's 40 seats in the south. I think that's the lesson to be learned. And like, I was watching the Novara Media election sesh, some of the afterwards thing, and you know, they nearly get it, but still people talk about it as in it's a problem of political messaging, you know, that it's a message, that the level on which the problem is, I'm not saying that all that analysis, but a lot of it is on the point of this political shenanigan, that political shenanigan.
Right.
You know, I think it's like, that's totally the wrong way to look at the actual problems. If we go and we look up north, like, why, I'll ask questions to people like panelists, see what, I don't know if you know so much about, but like, why do you think in Northern England, in these ex-industrial places, that they voted for the Tories, that they swung from Labour to Tories?
Well, I can give you the narrative that I think has the most coherence, and it was a narrative that I heard advanced before the election. And some of the only commentators that were telling me, I don't know, this could be this, you know, this could be a bloodbath here. This could be a real, you know, basically the people that were predicting a rather large majority when, you know, normal bourgeois political science was predicting a hung parliament, if not, you know, conservatives squeaking out a majority, right? They were saying this, that basically this is all about Brexit. And there is as much of a democratic mandate as you can get for Brexit. And the political class kept trying to relitigate it. But I
think it's deeper than that, Lexi. I'm going to go in on you here. I think it's deeper.
I mean, you're not going to let me finish my sentence. Which
okay, keep going.
Which, you know, again, what do I think of this analysis? Not really sure, but it makes sense of the situation, right? Is that there's, as far as you get democratic mandates for things, there's a democratic mandate for Brexit. The political class, virtually most of them, thinks, oh, this is clearly a terrible idea. And if I'm honest, I share that opinion. I'm like, this, you know, I don't love the EU, but this seems like incredibly misguided. And the only reason that I would like it is because it will be the end of the United Kingdom. That's the only conceivable, you know, real reason I could see to pursue that, is if you want to destroy the United Kingdom as a political entity.
It's a hell of an upside.
I mean, I think that's an upside, but I can understand why the British ruling establishment isn't like a big fan of this. And if for just for that reason, and then there's also, you know, additional like humanitarian reasons that are, you know, important, but in matters of politics, of course, secondary, because this is a brutal, inhuman game. And so I don't know. I guess I'm putting this out there because for the most part, like people see this as a right-wing or reactionary narrative. And I don't know what, to say to that, because I don't think you have to be a reactionary to take up a narrative like this. I think there is like a disjunction between like what people in the political class want and what has been expressed as a democratic mandate through institutions. And if you followed that, there's a big democratic mandate for Brexit. And then you see Labour running a campaign that was actually about not just Corbyn's personality, but, a lot of issues. They, did manage to do messaging on issues and blah, blah, blah. But they didn't take a strong stance on Brexit. They didn't want to break things up along those lines, even though Corbyn had a stance on Brexit. And the main message from the Johnson campaign is, let's get Brexit done. Let's get this over with already. That it's a coherent narrative, right? And if we don't agree with this, what's wrong with it?
Okay, I'll tell you what I think is wrong with it. At base, they go up and they ask, like, these Labour supporters, like the vote share, like in the northern towns, some of the vote was down in the low 50s. All the Labour people didn't even come out to vote. Okay, and you ask them, like, I don't know, Shane, have you travelled much around the UK to some of the like small towns in the disaster zones at all?
Not a huge amount, no, but a few bits,
I'll tell you the story. Like, myself and my mates, we went on a kind of a disaster capitalism trip home to Ireland one Christmas.
Right.
And we spent a week driving across like all the worst places in England and staying a night there. Right.
Right.
And it was unbelievable. Like, it was unbelievable. Like, I've been all over the world, and I tell you what, you'd find it hard to find places in post-Soviet collapse Russia that were as bad as Grimsby. It was unbelievable. Grimsby used to be the biggest fishing port in the world, right? Until they overfished it, all the fish are gone, right? And the city is just left there. There's nothing there. We were in this hotel, and it was about a 200-room hotel. It was like it was like The Shining. It was. There was nobody in it. The sheets all had dust on them. I'd say there was nobody in the room that we were in a year. And we went down to the reception, and we went to the woman behind her desk. I said, is there anywhere we could get now some nice seafood, like, because of the fishing port? They still have some like small fishing stuff. And she said, oh yeah, well, I suppose you could go to Cleethorpes. And we're like, oh, that sounds like a fancy restaurant. I was like, where's that? She's like, oh, that's like 20 miles that way. And it was like, it was a different town. And we're like, oh no, is there somewhere we could get some food? Like, there's bound to be fish, some restaurant doing fish.
Right.
in the port. And she said, well, there's a fish and chip shop. And we were like looking at her going, this one is like something wrong with her.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's a city of 150,000 people, 200,000 people. So we said, okay, grand. We walked down, we walked around all the city centre. We were in the middle of the city centre. There was a closed subway. We found a Chinese takeaway where you could get takeout. And then we ended up going back to the fish and chip shop. And my mate ordered soup. They had a sit-down bit. And then when they brought him out the soup, they'd forgot to microwave it and it was cold. That's what Grimsby is like.
Wow.
Amazing.
Damn.
But yeah, I mean, it's like this. I think that what we're seeing is definitely like a working class in pain, right? Like that dispossessed and disenfranchised over decades and decades, and then given this one big red fuck you button, that like through all of the frustration and pain can be channeled through this like one bit channel of Brexit. And that's the only bit of agency they've kind of had, like, or that really anyone in the country has had for quite a while, And then for like Labour had, like, in 2017, they had a pretty damn solid campaign, and they did better than anyone expected off the back of, they had Corbyn, they had the pretty radical manifesto, and they had a soft Brexit policy. And then the difference this year was, well, they had Corbyn, they had the radical manifesto, and they had the fucking second referendum thing, which people aren't idiots. They know weasel shit when they see it. You know what I mean? And I think the appetite for a second referendum, the appetite for a people's vote, all this kind of stuff is vastly overestimated. Like it's mostly a phenomenon of the the commentariat, really, you know, and the sort of political class and so on. But the appetite for that just, I don't think, is actually there, you know. And so when it went in front of people, they're like, no, that's just fucking patronizing and dumb, and it looks and seems and probably is as if you're trying to fucking weasel your way out of it. And yeah, as Lexi said, there's a democratic mandate there. And what does it fucking say? That, like, you know, like the ostensible party of the working class or whatever just sort of has this humming and hawing kind of attitude towards democracy, really. And like, I think the thing that really fucking stood out to me this time was that the constituency for Grenfell, you know, the fucking tower that caught fire, that went Tory. And yeah, the Lib Dems kind of fucked it. I mean, the Lib Dems kind of fucked it by like sapping the vote a little bit. But the fact that the fucking Grenfell constituency
That's
can
not
go
the fucking
Tory.
Lib Dems. No. Let's noise. Lib Dems is fucking noise.
Yeah,
you
No,
know
it's
what I
not.
mean?
No, it's not. They
Yeah, it
literally,
is. That-
like, you think about
is
it, like that's how Kensington seat was a Tory stronghold forever.
Mhm.
Last time was a huge shock, and they won it by like 2 votes or something. And this time,
okay, yeah.
and this time, who did the Lib Dems put into that seat? Only a Tory, and he split the vote, and you won. The Labour person only actually lost by about a few hundred votes,
About
and
100
he
or so.
basically
Okay, look,
took like
look,
6,000 votes. But that's not the point.
I categorically reject that, you know, people voting for one party is the reason that the
No,
other party loses.
I'm trying to get to something. I agree. I'm trying to get to something, but I've got waylaid on my stupid story about.
That's all right.
But the point that I was trying to make was that like I've been reading about like how Labour came up, and they were working class people working together communally. They were getting like healthcare sorted for themselves. They were paying dues together. They were doing childcare together. They strike together. They had a real sense of community, and it was social. And you go up to these places now, and what do they have? They have historical memory of something.
Right.
Yeah. Who do they have? They have the ex-miners, you know, who are all now literally, they're all in their 70s and 80s. Okay. And that's it. They're children who don't bother voting. And if you have any of those Labour people who think they've been betrayed by Blair and all these other people, and they see Farage come up, and it's like, here comes Brexit. Brexit is a symptom. It's a symptom of that decline of the organisation of the working class. And all of the political analysis of it is getting right back to our critique of Macnair. Okay? Our critique of Macnair both has a lot to say about this, but also our critique of Macnair is that it has to go to the social. And like this idea of momentum is like what? Momentum is basically, I'm not slagging people's work off. They did good work. But if you think about it, somebody was telling me, now I'm not sure if this is correct, I'm pretty sure it is that momentum has basically been turned off into basically like a thing where they can get canvassers out. And it's like one of these US vote pushing things. And
okay.
The Labour
Party, true with my experience.
The Labour Party itself
kind of thing here
needs to go like fundamentally democratic, right? The problem is will it actually go towards what it should go towards, a democratic, and will the actual activists go towards actually building the social thing? But to do that, they got to go to these places. There's no point in just sending up some London Twitter sphere heads or Manchester sphere heads or wherever the hell out to these places and sending them and kind of geeing people up one last time. Yeah, and they see you once every 5 years. I'm living in I'm living in Greenwich in London, right? It's where I'm living is like one of the lowest income places in London, and it's a Labour stronghold, right? And while Labour councils have probably done well to try and keep like the child centre places open and the libraries going a bit, and all these things, and trying to prevent them from being shut down, right? But me as a person, as a fucking communist, right?
Sure.
Have I ever had a positive interaction with the Labour Party? Never had any real interaction. We tried to get a shelter for our bikes on our street. Twice we applied for it and they fought us off twice, right? That's the limit of my interaction with them. When it comes to stuff like libraries and stuff, and maybe they're doing really good work behind the scenes, maybe they're not, maybe they are, right? that never hits me. When I go to the library, it's just a fucking library. It's not the Labour library, right? It's not like this library has been brought to you by the Labour Party. We fought. It's just a fucking library. You go to the Sure Start Centre. It's just a Sure Start. Like it's not in people's. They have no connection. It's totally disassociated. The party is like set up for managing fucking councils, and it's inherent. They're inherently resistant, like councillors and all that. They inherently don't like their own people to get involved, fundamentally.
Yeah. Well, I guess the kind of big anti-electoralist tendency, people in the United States, socialists in the United States, that learned something really specifically in 2016, is that that other tendency is something people call around here base building. What they do is that they want to form some kind of like social interest org, for instance, like a tenants union, okay, and build some kind of outside of electoral space, build some kind of collective sense of self-interest. Now, I kind of know this strategy as the Saul Alinsky strategy, and I know that it's being presented in Marxist terms these days, but I know this from like the progressive organizing days of the 2000s, and this was usually presented as an alternative to not just like voting for John Kerry and the Democrats, but also like Green Party stuff. Is that okay? We're going to do community organizing. It is a good idea, of course, to look to the social instead of the directly political, right? However, a lot of community organizers, some of them are pretty scrupulous and are really interested in these efforts in a way for themselves. That like just the essential experience of people fighting for their own interests is what's important here. Then you have people that are motivated by the failures of their other sort of more alienated political efforts. And now these people can be a problem, but on the other hand, what if a bunch of people that realize that, a kind of political internal Labor Party thing and just only interacting with, the proletariat to canvas or something, what if this pushes them in the community organizer direction is what I'm trying to say. Like, what if that there's a base building tendency in like as well? Like, I'm sure this is already something that people are doing in the UK, but it's going to gain an influx of people that don't want to give up the fight in some way. Like,
do people think that's been done in the UK? Shane, do you think that's been done in the UK?
I kind of like from seeing the last couple of weeks, or even just the whole sort of Corbyn momentum thing. It has felt like it's kind of trying to retroactively build its own support base after the fact, or whatever. Like trying to kind of start out as a party apparatus kind of thing. I mean, this is kind of just riffing on that kind of classic idea of like, social base. Like it doesn't fucking exist like currently, and like. Mm-hmm. I mean, I really don't mean to denigrate the kind of like canvassers and the people I know and respect who have gone out and really fucking tried. But, I mean, it's a thing that comes up over and over again that like you kind of need to start from a social base and then build from there, not try to backfill it at the end.
Yeah.
Completely. And I think kind of in the shadow of this kind of defeat, like that really has to come under scrutiny. Like, the electoral thing, the entryism or whatever you want to call it, and like trying to then go around and talk to people in the last moments as you're trying to stitch that together, doesn't seem to have worked, But I do hope that, like, I mean, so like the question now is what the fuck comes next, right? Like, are people just going to be fucking deflated and not bother anymore, or I think that's maybe what Lexi was gesturing to, is like trying to detach from the party and do this base building stuff instead, to kind of learn the lesson effectively, right? To say that, hey, look, yeah, we do in fact actually need to build from the social first, and to just do all the stuff and then go out and do it. Maybe even like something like Momentum becomes a kind of non-party faction or a cross-party sort of thing, like an organization in its own right that has its tentacles into various parties. There's a bunch of different ways that can go, but also depressingly, one of the ways it goes is possibly that it goes fucking nowhere. That's also another possibility.
Yeah,
which is really scary.
I mean, in some ways, it's the most obvious possibility that and so without some action, right? It will kind of go there. A lot of people are going to just flake off of the electoral tactic. Specifically, people that have the electoral horizon, that's their whole strategy, right? Like, those people are going to be devastated. They need a new strategy. People that are aware that this is like a tactic in a bag of tricks or something are going to be less devastated. But all the same, like, I don't know, community organizing, I've tried it. I don't even really know what it is. Like, and I suspect a lot of people that try it aren't that good at it and burn out.
I kind of wonder if like even community organizing is kind of like a couple of rungs up the ladder from like the kind of basic stuff. Like, I mean,
yeah, me too.
The atomization and the sheer like acid bath of late capital, just like dissolving fucking everything, kind of leaves us like yeah, the community org, like doing a community garden or something, is kind of probably, like there are prerequisites for building solidarity that are kind of presumed for that just aren't there. So I don't know, like, I don't know.
Here, but lads, what about what do we not think, and ladies, do we not think that that we could like get communism through like the Labour Party in its current form by like getting Momentum, doing canvassing, and then we can incrementally just up the amount of the shares that the government, that the workers own, incrementally each year, maybe 2% this one, and we get there by 45 parliaments later.
Tom, we need a community garden. We need a community garden first.
Who's going to speak against that?
We need a community garden first. No, community garden first, then incremental change. That's the only difference. Is first we need community gardens, and then as long as we keep everything else the same, it should all work.
Oh, you know what's an example for that? Like, just riffing on that community garden bit, is that like the way this kind of community organizing stuff actually kind of plays out in practice a lot of the time is the way you support community projects is if you go down and do your weekly groceries at Tesco, they give you a little blue token, and on the way out, there's a little like 3 slots thing to like support. Do you want to support like, community garden, or do you want to support some other fucking thing or whatever? And you drop your little fucking vote token into the thing. And like, that kind of all, like, I mean, they're great initiatives, whatever, but like that kind of feels like it's still captured by fucking capital at a fundamental level, and really isn't a truly like not even grassroots, but below the grassroots, like down in the worms and muck and roots thing level of organizing. It's quite a few levels above it of like, hey, Tesco will help you vote for a fucking, also, vote, like spend your little blue fucking money token. Like, could it be like literally a market introduced into the fucking like community organizing thing? Like, I don't know.
Shade, friend. There are people that do this down in the dirt with their junkie and sex worker friends.
Too.
Like there is nice kind of more romantic punk versions of this in the American heartlands and stuff like that. Those things do exist, and the question is, even in those like limit cases of wow, all these people are not the usual suspects maybe, and they're trying to do something, even like, so like, yeah, in the Tesco blue token Black Mirror co-op case, whatever, like that yeah, that's clearly foreclosed. That is clearly something that's captured. That's that's John Lennon's Imagine. That's not the next revolutionary anthem. It's but even in these sort of stronger cases of, let's say, God, what was the very dismal town with the cold soup you were talking about, Tom?
Grimsby. There's a film.
Yeah, Grimsby.
Borat did a film about Grimsby. It's
okay,
called Grimsby.
All right.
Yeah,
the Grimsby. All right. Well, maybe some kids in Grimsby will listen through to the Revolutionary Strategy series, get to reading Mike Macnair, somehow accidentally stumble upon Hal Draper, and then, go attempt to do like Alinsky at organizing with Marxist characteristics in Grimsby, right?
Well,
so like,
look, I'm telling you, we've got
like
902 subscribers to my YouTube channel now.
Lovely.
Sky's the limit.
Wow, damn. We're buying a yacht. But the point being, like, even in the strongest case, and to criticize something like this, again, I feel like I just described the plot to the Goonies. Like, this warms my heart. Like, I want to see this happen. I want these kids to exist. I want them to try to like associate themselves, and then I want them to win. But even in the stronger case, that isn't that, it's not the Tesco blue token. Like, we're still in danger of something being kind of good, doing some good, and then kind of petering out because it's very unsustainable to do that level of good as an activist, or as something that doesn't have social legs that kind of carries it further beyond a sort of, even if it's mutual aid, like good, but you want something to be like institutionalized to a very light degree where it's not literally just a couple people doing it. Like, or if the people that started it withdrew, that it could continue. Like, I don't know how many other layers of institutionalization, invalidate something from liberatory content or something.
Yeah.
Like,
9
like
to 12.
the capitalism kicks in, and then, we can't do anything anymore. But
what's kind of amazing there is that, like, what we're describing, like, I'm in agreement, right? But what we're describing there is literally the absolute rock bottom of just organizing at all. Like, organization is to form organs which persist, like, beyond the activity of their cells. You know what I mean? And that is like table stakes. But that's the sort of like seemingly fucking intractable, like, utopian vision of like getting any kind of an organ to form in any sense at all. That's so that it wouldn't just be the activist burnout of when an individual cell stops doing its thing, the entire fucking thing collapses. And it's just like the gap here with this election is really fucking with my head. Like that, like the sort of momentum Corbyn wave seeming to have such support, and yet when you kind of look below, there's just kind of nothing, And again, I really don't want to denigrate the people who really have fucking tried, like, have put a lot of work into this kind of stuff. But like the social infrastructure, the basics of like solidarity and kind of organization in the working class is seemingly, and I'm open to being wrong on this, but seemingly just utterly fucking absent. And, we're going to have to think about going down to like the amino acid kind of level and constructing fucking proteins from scratch to like build up towards cells and build up towards organs, Oh, fuck, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Like,
that makes sense.
Is it actually the case that workers are so disorganized, or is it the case that it's just the kind of workers that would go into Momentum that are organized? Like, it's really hard for me to get a grasp on this whole thing because everybody I know from the UK who is not like a left-wing politico was a Corbyn supporter, and also was like a definite like pro-Remain person, right? And so like the other points of view in this discussion are just completely invisible, and that situation is made worse because the UK media that is available that would talk about these things was largely on the same page, right? Like The Guardian was pretty hostile to Corbyn, was very adamant in promoting the Remain line, right? in the election, they became more sort of like pro Corbyn, because I guess Corbyn kind of like went along with the bare minimum of what they wanted. And then the other sources that you look at is kind of the same story. So it's like I'm really reminded here of like Manuel Castells's formulation of the space of flows versus the space of places. Like, I think maybe the workers in the space of flows have some organizing potential, but they're not quantitatively very many people on the left, at least. And the space of places, it's just like it's like a foreign country that, you have to do like space probes to go find out what the hell's going on there, because it's so out of the conversation. It's just like it's like you read the literature about this stuff, or sorry, like the news reporting about this stuff, or the discussion about this stuff on Twitter or on podcasts or whatever, and it's very like anthropological. Like, oh, we're going to the hinterlands to talk to the strange native people. It's like, what is so?
It's missionary work.
Yeah, no, it reminds me of like they're doing a revolutionary series right now about Russian Revolution, and it just reminds me of like going to the people is the kind of conversation that's happening here. And I'm not like I think there is a substantial number of workers who are like in the momentum orbit, who are actually workers, but who have very little in common with the sorts of people we've been talking about on this program so far. And I don't know if they really see that much common interest.
They might have an accent.
There's a whole lot of disconnect.
Like at best they'll have an accent, and I'm not trying to give out about anybody, because I'm fucking that guy too. But it reminds me, like, just when we're going back to Grimsby, when we walk down the main pedestrian street in Grimsby, it'll tell you how grim it was. It's like 2 or 3 days before Christmas, and like there was myself and 2 big Irish guys, 6'1", 2 guys, big guys walking down. And this guy came over to us, and in a slightly threatening manner, he asked my mate, he said to him, "Can I have your jacket?" And my mate was like, "What the fuck? What the fucking question is this, man?" Like, and the pub we drank in, everybody, there's 4 pubs in the city we could find. Everybody was an alcoholic. One guy was standing, and in these pubs where they have like fake old stuff, they from an old church, they cut pieces of church and they put it up on the side of the wall. And there was some banisters, and this guy was standing for 2 hours with his head between 2 banisters, holding them. And then another guy came from the jacks. He came from the toilets, and he walked past, and he said to me, he says, "You're that guy from Coldplay." And I was like, "What the fuck?" He goes, what's your man's name? Chris Martin. He goes, "You're Chris Martin from Coldplay."
Oh my God.
I said, "Oh yeah." I was like, with an Irish accent, I said, "Oh yeah, well, don't tell anybody I'm here, but yeah." And he's like, "What the fuck are you doing in Grimsby?"
Oh my God.
And I was like, "Oh, I was playing a gig in Norwich last night, and we're just like out in the town in Grimsby tonight." And he was like, "Fucking brilliant." He's like, "I fucking love that song Yellow." And he stumbles off. Like that was everybody in the pub.
Wow.
Like it was like something from fucking, you see these post-Soviet Russian miners and they're like falling over. Right. It was incredible. But I want to bring it back a little bit to my favorite bugbear. Well, not my favorite bugbear. One of another of a long bugbears I have with this current left we have is that we have no internationalism, none. Right? Do I was so surprised. I listen. I don't know how I still do it. Once in a blue moon, I will listen to what's that one? Is it Dead Pundit Society? Anybody know that one?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Oh yeah. God. Yeah. I'm aware of Adam proctologist Playland. Yeah.
Yeah. So on him, right? I don't know if you've seen a picture of this guy. I've never heard somebody who looked exactly like their voice. Like he's the most Buzz Lightyear sounding motherfucker I've ever heard in my life, right? And he fucking looks like him. He's like a Men's Health model. It's like what? Oh, I don't know what this guy's buzz is, but he had on like an advisor to an ex economic advisor to John McDonnell, and he was chatting about stuff. And at the end, he was talking about how Momentum, Americans could phone bank Britain. They could ring up and they could get the info from Momentum, and they could phone bank. And I was like saying to myself, it was like I was really surprised. They actually did the most minuscule bit of internationalism, and it's the very, very, very first bit I have ever heard in this election or in the American election. Shows you how unbelievably nationalist all of these things are. Not only that, oh no, it's gone. But tied into this, not only do we have no international on the left at the moment. I mean the dominant left stuff, but it's like I was into you guys earlier, because earlier we have Ireland can have a left wing nationalism like Sinn Féin, and Scotland can have a left wing nationalism like SNP. I'm not going to say after they get unity they'll still be left wing. They'll tend right. But and implied you can have a left wing nationalism, right? But in England, an imperial nation, you can't have a nationalism. You can't have a nationalism be left wing, because the nationalism that is the nationalism of England is about how we ruled the fucking world, right? And to get somebody in there who says, well, actually, you stole shit, you murder fucking people, and you burnt their shit down, right? That's what your empire is about. That cannot work. It can't work in France. It can't work in Spain. It can't work in Portugal. It can't work in Italy. Can't work in Germany. It can't work in any of the imperial ones. It can work for a while in a colony, right? We just look at all the colonies that did it for a while. But so Brexit was always going to be a disaster. Always going to be a disaster. And it shows, for me, it's like the Brexit Party were an irrelevance fucking 10, 15 years ago. They were 2, 3, 4%. They were as irrelevant as the Greens, and normally polling less. But these fucking capitalist motherfuckers, right? What will they do? They know the system. They're intellectuals, read Marx and stuff. They do. And they know about how to divide and conquer. They've been doing it for 400 goddamn years, right? And minimum. And they're sitting there waiting with these fucking time bomb parties and tactics like the Tea Party in America, ready to go for the crisis is to come. And if we've got to have any strategy of the left, it's got to be ready for these fucking cannons that are pointing at us, waiting for the next thing to go wrong in capitalism.
Yeah. I think there's certainly something to that. Like that at the very least, these, even if it wasn't planned in advance, I think this thing has been a sort of wonderful gift to the capital class in being able to keep everyone fucking distracted for so long. And I kind of worry, now that it seems like the UK is about to fucking fall apart, I worry that the Scottish independence thing is going to be the same thing, of a big, giant, national scale fucking spectacle that gets everyone's attention for a couple of years and means that they're not working on building a workers' party. It'll just be this fucking heat sink that, like Brexit, that just takes up all the fucking space and energy in the room.
Well, can we just drill a little bit into the question of why, in response to this event, why is it that there was this very strong response across a lot of the left saying, okay, well, the thing we got to do now is nationalism. We're going to break up the UK, right? We're going to go Irish unification. We're going to go Scottish independence. And this is the cause we can rally around. Why did we go there?
I think both of those are pre-existing tendencies that have been around for a while, to say the very least, right? That there's been a kind of gravitational pull for the Irish case, towards eventual reunification. The Scottish independence thing has been floating around for quite a while. I think in both cases, you have, with the Brexit vote, you have this like England and Wales broadly vote in favour of Brexit, and then Scotland and Northern Ireland vote pretty decisively to remain, and yet get dragged along as always by the fucking English. And that kind of just inflames those existing tendencies away. Because, like, you know, the English are widely fucking despised in the UK, right? But, like, it just inflames it to a point where, like, at least in Scotland, like, there's palpable disgust at the fact that we, like, this polity just cannot get its way. Like, the democratic vote in Scotland simply doesn't matter because those fucking idiots down south are just going to ruin it for everyone, right? Like, and I think it's got to a breaking point where they're just like, no, enough. We've got to be rid of these cunts. It's time to drill a hole and sink England, basically, you know. And like, for many people in Scotland, it seems like it's not even necessarily an investment in the nationalism. It's just that kind of like with the Irish separation thing. It's just like, we've got to get away from these fuckers so that we can do anything of our own, like left, right, or center, you know. But that determination just is not there if you're kind of tied to this fucking millstone. So yeah, I think that's why that kind of reaction has come through so strongly, because it's a visceral rejection of basically kind of a rejection of the UK as an institution. Frankly, yeah. Like if people are honest with themselves, you know, it's like a lot of people walking around here are just frankly disgusted at like the institution of the United Kingdom as a totality. And like you look at the electoral map for this election just gone, and it's as plain as day. Like basically every fucking constituency is SNP.
Blue and green.
It couldn't be more clear, you know. And I don't think that's necessarily down to like I think there are distinct cultures within the UK. Like I think the Scots are a lot friendlier and kind of more on the level than a lot of folks down south. But like it's also just that when you cross the border north, the SNP or some alternative becomes available. Suddenly, it's not a two-horse race between Labour and the Tories. There's this other. I mean, look, the SNP are a fairly middle-of-the-road sort of neo-lib kind of socially progressive kind of party. Like they're kind of unremarkable in a certain way, except for the independence push. But once they're available as an option, people fucking do it because they're just absolutely disgusted at the rest of it. It's almost like a kind of micro or a meso-scale like anti-politics in a way, right? It's just a rejection of the Westminster way of doing things.
I guess what I'm hearing is that like there's a substantial disgust of the current state of affairs, and also there's a lot you can project onto the idea of national autonomy, right? Yeah. Like because it's something kind of nebulous and undefined, and just gets you away from this the fucking status quo and how disgusting it is. Like even if it's the case that like politics in Scotland would just be captured by the neoliberals as soon as independence happened, like just the possibility that it might not be is still attractive given the circumstances.
Yeah, it doesn't seem that, it just doesn't seem that empty to me actually, because all right, the kind of anti-politics narrative I was talking about earlier, that Brexit has a democratic mandate. If we wanted to challenge that, we would look at the ways that bourgeois institutions distort, democratic will, or like the ways that elections don't necessarily like represent a lot of people. Like there's still a lot of people in these elections that end up disappointed. There's still people in these referenda that end up disappointed. The break-off of Scotland and the break-off of Northern Ireland, reunification with Ireland, would be positive steps in a democratic direction. For a population to have institutions that like more accurately represent them. And of course, they're going to be distorted bourgeois institutions. But I guess that seems immediately attractive to me, that like a hard Brexit
simply about self-determination, right? Like
a hard Brexit, like it's gonna be, especially now that there's this conservative majority. Like before the election, I was saying, oh, you think there's gonna be a Christmas Brexit miracle? Now seems like it could actually happen. It doesn't seem that far off, and the way it's gonna go down is going to piss Northern Ireland and mainland Ireland off so bad. I'm pretty sure the SNP is already calling for another referendum.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, as of
they
today,
are.
basically.
This stuff's going to happen pretty quick.
Yeah, the United Celtic Front is finally formed.
Yeah. I think there's one thing I should probably clarify. I mean, especially probably for like American listeners, like we've been talking about these kind of like these nationalisms or whatever, but they don't really call to mind what you'd expect. Like, so one of the big sort of swings in favor of the SNP in the wake of Brexit was that people up here could detect the kind of xenophobia of the Brexit sort of result, and the that kind of isolationist rhetoric, and their support for independence is not so that they can form a kind of isolated kind of Bantustan kind of with high walls or whatever. It is a kind of like a turn to nationalism in order to affirm a cosmopolitan internationalism. Like, I mean, people look around here and they can do the mental arithmetic, and it's like there's so many Europeans and like people from all over the world here. It's a fairly cosmopolitan part of the UK, and like they're like, oh no, we're going to do nationalism so we can be internationalists. You know what I mean? Like it's a little bit counterintuitive maybe for the American audience. It's not quite the same thing as what you'd expect it to be given the label.
Right. Yes,
But it's probably similar to Ireland, where nationalism
Pretty much
became neutral, and they weren't like, they got out of, they never entered NATO, although they do a bit of shit now.
Yeah.
It's that kind of a vibe.
That sort of stuff, basically. Yeah, it's much closer to the kind of Irish nationalism, whatever, than to the kind of nationalisms you think of like the United States, or like a Trump nationalism, or whatever, MAGA nationalism.
So, to what extent then is like the SNP messaging on this question like ethnocentric? Does it appeal to like liberal, cosmopolitan, universal values as like like, we're not like those parochial people down south?
Pretty much. Like it's not even remotely ethnocentric. In fact, it's probably the opposite. Like it is explicitly multicultural, multinational, international.
Right.
Like the rallying cry is the English are going to close our borders for us, and we're not going to let them. That's what the rallying cry seems to be. It's like, hey, if you like having Greeks and people from everywhere hanging around Scotland, and everyone does, like to within a rounding error, like it's a very cosmopolitan kind of part of the world, right? Let's fucking ditch the English so they don't fucking ruin it for us. It's kind of basically the gist, I'm familiar with that kind of nationalism because I live in Canada. Sure, yeah,
it's very, very similar to Canadian nationalism. But
right.
The interesting thing is that like Scotland is a potential ethno state, and it doesn't, like, the rhetoric isn't angling in that direction, which is very different from Canada.
It's very different,
right.
But Scotland also has like pretty substantial like Asian, like really substantial Asian population. So I think even like the societies that there's racism all throughout societies, but I think, I could kind of hang my hat on a statement like Scotland is a pretty non-racist sort of place, with all the qualifiers in the world, tacked onto the end of that statement. But it doesn't seem to be in any way a sort of ethno-nationalist kind of thing. It's not like you're kind of fucking Cascadia secessionist front kind of thing where they all by coincidence are fucking white dudes,
Yeah, like I'm a little skeptical that nationalism can be deployed without those overtones somewhere.
Yeah,
but
sure.
The thing that gives your comments like an air of plausibility is that what are Scotland and a united Ireland going to do as soon as they get independence and for Ireland reunification? They're going to join the EU.
Yeah.
Right? And I guess as part of reunification, Northern Ireland will join the EU.
And a nuclear power. That's what I hope.
Yeah.
Well, now, Tom, now you have a voice. You have a voice on the world stage, Tom. Yeah, finally.
I think as well, like when you listen to the SNP or whatever, like they kind of say the quiet thing out loud in some ways, in that like the argument for having independence so that we can be an open sort of country is because like we need the labor to like replace all the people who are aging and dying, you know? Like it's almost like they're super upfront about it being a kind of capitalistic neoliberal sort of thing, right? That like it's like, oh yeah, we want to have like this progressive fucking immigration regime or whatever because of labor like shortage. Like they're kind of weirdly upfront about it in a certain way.
I guess I have to respond to this question on the screen of whether I support a hard Albexit or Wexit, as it is often called. Nice. The Albertans trying to wrangle Saskatchewan into that notion. No, I mean that's just a complete fuzz campaign of the sort that Tom was describing. These sort of like marginal astroturf organizations that capital tends to mobilize in a crisis. I don't think there's any argument that can be made in favor of Albertan independence. I don't even entertain the notion. It's just like the specter of deindustrialization really does hang over this province very heavily. There's a gloom and a fear among everybody here right now, and a lot of fear about what's going to happen in the future, because this has been a quite a wealthy industrial province. It's been a place where for many years it was the only place in Canada where working class people could achieve some level of class mobility. And that's probably, or that's over. It's certainly over. And what does that mean? That's a really scary question. But does independence solve that problem in any way at all? I don't think so. So as you know, speaking about the Scottish independence case, I think there's a lot more merit to that argument than the Albertan independence argument.
It was really funny to see that kind of wave, especially like after the 2014, the initial independence vote. There's these couple of other sort of secessionist movements pop up and basically borrow the logo. Like the California independence thing with its like Yes logo is literally like a screenshot of the fucking Yes logo from the Scottish independence campaign. Like these copycat kind of movements that don't really have the kind of long history of like simmering support is kind of entertaining.
Mm-hmm. Well, there is a history here. Okay. It's just there's never really been a good case for it. It's always been a rhetorical ploy by Albertan capital to get a better deal within the Canadian Federation. Yeah,
this is just Texas. This is Texas nationalism, basically.
Oh, it's very Texas nationalism. Yeah.
Which is like, it's interesting that you the mention of the capital there, because like, I mean, I think, I don't know, we're kind of getting into the weeds on these kind of like separatist like nationalisms that are against their colonial masters or whatever. But like the thing that would like capital was shitting itself in the run up to the 2014 independence vote. Like it was very like, no, please fucking don't do this. But it had fairly wide popular support. I mean, obviously not wide enough to get it over the line. But I don't know. I feel like the ways that these kinds of like, again, so like for Scotland, Northern Ireland, for like Wales, or basically for the breakup of the UK, which seems to be coming, it's going to be really fun to like try to figure out along what lines this stuff really does split. You know, like oh Jesus, yeah. I mean, is Northern Ireland's reunification with the main Ireland, is that a plot by Northern Irish capital to fuck over everyone? Probably not. Like almost certainly not. But it would be a default kind of explanation that many Marxists would reach for. You know what I mean? I don't know. There's some really wild stuff going on there probably.
What about the lizards? We haven't discussed the lizards either.
Oh yeah.
Valid point.
So I don't know. I think I've kind of answered maybe something that I brought up way back at the start of this conversation, where I was kind of going on about like, oh Jesus, it's so hard to believe that the fucking Grenfell place went this way, or that people didn't respond to that photo of that kid on the floor of the hospital. And really, I've kind of, in thinking about it just now, I've answered for myself that like the reason I found that hard to believe was that I got swept up in the fucking idealism of it, frankly, like of scrolling through Twitter and seeing the Momentum folks out there, and it's like, yeah, Jez is about to do it and this sort of thing. And yeah, and then there's this massive crushing disappointment when you realize that, like, yeah, that there kind of wasn't enough to it behind it all, and that, you know, there was some really fucking bad tactical and strategic mistakes on the part of the leadership as well. Like, as we mentioned earlier, going for the kind of re-referendum angle seems to have completely fucked them. Like, 2017, they ran on basically the same platform and got pretty damn far with it. And 2019, same platform, but with a second referendum, and people smell the bullshit, you know, because they're not morons at heart, right?
You look at the polling, and Labour were ahead of the Tories up until Theresa May's deal came in. And when they started playing political games with it, they went way down. And they thought that they could make, and to some extent I did, but I obviously didn't think it through properly. I thought that they could use it to hang the Tories, make them look like a shit show and split them. But what it did is it cleansed them, brought them united, and it exposed Labour's flank instead of their own.
Yeah.
You know, and that's just the polls. I thought the polls were off. Interestingly, you look, reason why I thought the polls were off, because they were weighting them to Brexit. That they weighted them to have a 52-48 in favour of Brexit. And while the polls in this election showed the parties that were against Brexit was 52-48. So, well, that's probably not even true, because probably some Brexiteers still voted for Labour. And in all of the northern towns, a lot of the Labour people just didn't vote at all, or they voted for Brexit Party. Turnout way down. So, like, in essence, they thought they were playing silly buggers with their strategy. They're trying to be too smart, and it burnt them. But, you know, you make mistakes in politics, but that's not the reason why they lost. Because if it wasn't this election, it would be another election where there'll be a technique, because there is no way to socialism through politicos canvassing once every 5 years.
Yeah, totally. I kind of wonder as well if this, like, all this kind of like 4-dimensional chess stuff and like the kicking things around sort of stuff is just such a kind of invention of like of Twitter and the fucking commentary sphere, that like it just obscures all these like fairly simple root level explanations for things, like, you know, that like that kind of really does boils right down to that thing that like kind of like what would have happened if they'd won. Kind of probably not very much. Like I keep hearing the word Mitterrands just fucking echoing in my head.
Right.
And yeah, I don't know.
That'd make a good song track title, wouldn't it? Mitterrand echoing in my head.
Yeah. That'd be a real fucking hit of the summer for this year.
You're my Britpop revival band.
Yeah. So social base, folks, gotta fucking do it.
I got a Twitter ban.
How do you do it?
My first Twitter ban.
You got a Twitter ban? I'm proud of you.
Do you know what I got it for? I called the basis of the Blur a Tory cunt.
Good man. Fair play.
Very nice.
Man, I saw him play in New York in 1997.
Oh wow!
All of my friends were there. We were like going, "That guy is a cunt." And I said that in the tweet. I said, "I saw you in New York in '97. We all thought you were a cunt." And now it's 2019, and you're still a Tory cunt. Interestingly, you mightn't believe me here, but I was at that concert. We were standing beside the VIP area. I don't know why. And is it Helena Christensen, the supermodel, and another supermodel were there with us, and they were like talking. They asked us for a lend of a cigarette. And we were like, I know you from like Chanel ads. And we're like, okay, there's the one. It was very strange. Anyway, that's That's my. I met a supermodel. One, I met another supermodel, but I won't go into that one. But,
Okay.
sorry.
All right.
Oh, full of stories here tonight.
You're talking about
I once met a supermodel. There you go.
yeah.
Have we anything left to talk about here before I freeze to death in this?
Besides Stephen Alexander James, the English musician and songwriter.
Oh yeah. Have you
as well as a journalist and a cheesemaker.
He writes for The Guardian as well.
Oh my god.
And he hangs
Proper
around
ballbag,
David Cameron and that big fish-faced 7-foot car weirdo. What's his name?
Clarkson?
Jeremy
Clarkson.
Ass-faced
Yeah.
You know, I gotta be honest, like I hadn't been paying that close attention to UK politics. So when like Theresa May called for the snap elections and I don't know, and it ended up in it hung Parliament, like I thought there was no fucking way that the Conservatives could win the next election. That's what I said. I said it out loud where everyone could see it.
Like, as far as I could tell, the Tories didn't run a strong campaign.
Like they looked so
terrible campaign.
pathetically weak that it was just like, well, anything could beat that, right?
Yeah.
It seems like it was much more like it wasn't so much people voting for the Tories as it was like explicitly a rejection of Labour. I think that's a lot of the analysis I've been seeing, kind of looking at the numbers of the ways things flipped. Yeah, that like it was much more a rejection of Labour than it was an affirmation
by old people. Like
the
youth was like 55%.
I don't know about that.
20. Yeah, no, it was like
the thing that makes more sense to me is that this is about Brexit. And this is more like electoral support for a like, all right, let's do the Brexit.
Like just get it over with.
Yeah, like let's just get the shit over with. That's kind of like and maybe that's too defensive. Like if you think about it, that's a much nicer analysis for Corbyn because let's be honest, Corbyn was not as strong a leader as Tony Blair. He was sort of an historically sort of weak actor as a head of a party going into an election, like, and part of that is by design, of course. He's bringing an oppositional message into an institution, but if you're gonna bring an oppositional message into an institution, let's look at like your payoff matrices. If you go soft left, people are gonna say you're a Stalinist. If you actually go for what like a good, Marxist electoralist would go for, they're also going to say you're a Stalinist. You kind of might as well do what you think, needs to be done or you campaign on it instead of like softening yourself to the point where you can't take an issue on the most important thing in the country's politics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, but isn't like an issue there that Corbyn's personal opinion on Brexit was supposedly he was in favor of it, but like the momentum people.
That's not true. That's just right.
It's not true. Okay, so he's not.
I understood that to be true, but I guess that's not true.
No.
Okay.
I don't know. Internet, tell us the truth.
Yeah.
It's not true. Like he denied, he said he voted for any campaign for, but he had a critical campaign for Europe. His campaign was we should renegotiate.
Oh, true. Europe. Yeah, that was his official position. Yeah. That's right. In the original referendum. So, but it feels like, the activist base that brought Corbyn to power and Corbyn didn't necessarily see eye to eye on this issue. And then there was a lot of division between, that group and the pro-Brexit Labour support. So like, it seems like it would be difficult for a leader to come up with a strong left campaign without the support of like the left wingers around him, right?
Yeah, he seems to have been a very it seems to be just division all around, right? Like there's no clean sort of like unitary kind of alliance. It's always kind of like, I like Corbyn's policies, but don't know about him as a person, or like, oh, I like him as a person, but those policies, or 3 or 4 different axes there, and it's kind of like he's a highly kind of ambivalent kind of figure. Like, I think, yeah, I mean, he's there was a certain joyous way in which he absolutely fucked off everyone who like needed to be like annoyed into a heart attack in this country, but like also kind of hard for a lot of people to throw their weight fully behind for a lot of reasons. Just like not a super strong leader, but also, you know, probably the best, like the closest thing we'll probably see for a good while to a socialist leader or whatever, you know, within that kind of area of the graph, right, that had any kind of popular support, as thin as it was. You know, it's like this is really weird, right? This kind of in some senses a non-event that was also the most significant event for the left. I don't know. I don't even know how to think about this shit anymore.
I mean, it's a big deal. This is an unexpected result. Like, you know, I don't know. It's significant. Like, this is important data, right? Like,
oh, it is certainly.
I think the sorts of thinking that come out of Corbynism are going to continue to be significant on the left in Canadian politics going forward. I think that the example of like Corbyn and Momentum did actually shift thinking here a little bit. And those policies seem to be maybe a little bit more popular here. They're not so confused by this issue of Brexit. So, you know, it's certainly it's kind of a marginal position still to argue for any of this kind of stuff in Canada, but I do think that there was an example there of bringing socialist or social democratic ideas back into policy thinking that did have some influence here. So, you know,
yeah, I just really hope it stays there. You know, like I hope it does build and continue. Like, I would prefer there to be like an institutional echo and hangover from Corbynism. I would prefer for it to develop and become even more positive and such. I kind of wonder, like, for the UK, like, if you could say that, like, oh, with Brexit, when Brexit gets out of the way, then maybe, you know, we can get that stuff back out into the daylight. But then, I don't know, we're kind of looking at probably just a kind of Yugoslavia situation of just like kind of like a breakdown and fucking fragmentation. And maybe when that's out of the way, then kind of Corbyn style socialism or socialist leaning politics can have its day in the limelight without interference. But then maybe there'll be something after that. I don't know. Like, I would strongly prefer there be another, like, continue the left resurgence. I really, really want that to happen, but I'm kind of worried, you know,
Look, can you hear me, people?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Sorry. The voting on the youths was Labour were big majorities all the way up, I think, to 44-year-olds, and then it switched over. So you know, we just have to wait around 40 years because we all know that young people don't turn to the right when they get a good house. Okay.
Well, I mean, they ain't getting a house, so nothing to worry about there.
That's true, but you know, they might get a wheelbarrow and a tarpaulin. Now,
they'll be bought off.
Yeah. Like, the Tories aren't going to do council houses, but they are going to do council wheelbarrow tarpaulin initiatives where the
wheelbarrow aristocracy.
Yeah, they'll give you a 0% loan to buy yourself a tarpaulin for your wheelbarrow.
Inherently reactionary.
Yeah. So wheelbarrows are inherently reactionary. Anybody I know who lived in a wheelbarrow for any period of time ended up in the mental asylum. Now, here we go. Are we all done? I'm freezing to death here.
Pretty much, yeah.
I think we're good.
Okay, thanks everybody for coming on the show today. Thanks for all the listeners. We had like probably a record of like 34 or something at one stage listening.
Wow. Shit.
We're hitting the big time. We're hitting the big time.
All right, fucking A. Love it.
Everybody, thanks very much for listening, and we'll see you next week when I talk about why I'm becoming a member of the Irish Republican Army.
Well,
Bye.
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 Bye.